Jack Dorsey, Twitter CEO, has resigned. And we ask, therefore, on this auspicious occasion, how did Twitter, an intended tool for democracy, become its mirror, its inversion, a tool for censorship? If it were possible to love all 4.5 million of you physically, embrace you, kiss you, if that's what you were after, you know I would do it. I'm so grateful for you to coming to us. If you're in the UK, come and see me on tour. I'm in Scotland, I'm in England, I'm all over the gaff. There's a link in the description if you want to see me. Where you may not be able to find access to that kind of information is Twitter. Now, I'm old enough to remember the first time I went on Twitter. Twitter in the beginning was beautiful. You'd go on Twitter and it would just be sort of chatting to people and you think, oh my God, I can open this box of wonder. People are like, hey, how's it going? And silly questions and frivolity. Twitter is now a kind of byword for, I don't know, is it toxicity? Is it condemnation, polarization, Twitter pylons? What aspect of human nature has been brought to the forefront by these social media platforms? And are they neutral, just tools, as I often naively describe them? Or do they have within them embedded certain ideologies and intentions that it's impossible to avoid if you use them? Let's investigate this. Let's talk really about censorship. Matt Taibbi on Substack says, Dorsey's departure is the latest plot point in a long-developing internet tragicomedy which has seen what was supposed to be a historically democratizing technological tool transformed into a dystopian force for censorship and control. Twitter under Dorsey suffered from working too well. Specifically, society responded to Donald Trump's tweet-driven 2016 presidential campaign as if it revealed a defect in the platform that needed fixing, when actually Trump's election was proof that Twitter was working much as intended. Our political establishment just wasn't looking for that sort of functionality. Donald Trump, regardless of your feelings for him, and I know a lot of you love Donald Trump, was a master of communication and perfect for Twitter because he was able to précede data in an accessible and human way. Like many of his cusses and his style and the things that he would capitalize, it just looked and seemed and felt interesting. And I suppose one of the things that make me sympathetic towards affiliates of Trump, aficionados of Trump, is the way that Trump is subsequently being handled and censored and controlled. Even though you can watch the videos of me vocally, verbally, aggressively criticizing Trump because of some of the language he used, some of the things he said, some of the implications of some of the things he said, rather than actual direct policy, because you know me, I don't think it makes that much bloody difference who the president of a particular boat is, if that boat is sailing in roughly the same direction with roughly the same crew and perhaps the same sort of admirals back at base going, you bloody well sail the ship in that direction, otherwise there'll be trouble. Naval analogies aside, Trump was perfect for our age, our social media age, where polarization, attempts at censorship, attempts at control, for a while played into the hands of a charismatic demagogic figure. Let's see what Taibbi's saying. The original concept of Twitter was egalitarian, flattening and iconoclastic, to give everyone power to create and share ideas instantly without barriers. Prior to 2016, elite mouthpieces bragged about acting as gatekeepers to political power. When political debates were held, a handful of analysts on television told you who won. We, reporters, told you who was electable and who wasn't. And people mostly listened, even if electability was a crock that mostly measured levels of corporate donor approval. Then came 2016. Trump didn't get the big Republican donor money. It went to Jeb Bush. Yeah, I remember thinking, oh, Jeb Bush is going to win. Oh, another Bush. Oh, I see how it works. But Trump just smashed all that. You see the way he talked to that Jeb Bush, he just made a mockery of him. He used animal energy to sort of just to sort of flash him away, like with piss drizzle. He didn't get the support of his party's bureaucracy, which at various times pulled out stops to try to derail his candidacy for the nomination, and even conservative media locked arms against him early in the race. Trump, throughout his political career, benefited from free corporate media coverage, but by the time of his first nomination, he had universally negative editorial treatment in mainstream media and even serious detractors on stations like Fox. Once, that would have been fatal to a politician. Trump didn't need the news media to amplify his message. He was expressing himself in a way that defied contextualization on a Twitter account that essentially became the country's most followed media network. Twitter's unique ability to exponentially increase the messaging force of a single individual had never been dealt with by institutional America before. so many unique phenomena. And again, I suppose it shows you the power of charisma. The somewhat hacky comparison of Donald Trump to an obvious historical figure certainly has one relevant component: the sheer power of the force of personality, particularly in a banalized and already corrupt space. Whether he was being dumb or smart or petty or cutting, incoherent or inscrutable, Trump had a way of expressing himself that automatically gave his tweets superior reach to news stories about his tweets. This put him permanently ahead of the news cycle. With this power, a politician was now able to communicate directly with voters, and even the collective displeasure of the entire self-described political establishment could not stuff that genie back in the bottle. In fact, that's one of the things that makes me a person who ideologically is pretty far opposed to someone who strip away the charisma and interpersonal magic, is a billionaire, property mogul, casino running kind of person. That's not my vision of the future, you know. But like, what I have to acknowledge and what I'm sympathetic towards is censorship. Like, this is what I feel. If you can't beat people fair and square because you're telling the truth, I want to make society better. I believe in ordinary people. I think things have got out of hand with billionaires and elites and big tech and the media. We need openness and freedom. We're going to have to learn to accept people with different opinions to us. We're going to have to reach across to people who we disagree with and go, how are we going to do this together? I know you think this and I think that, but what are we going to do? That's what I believe in. So I'm not coming from a perspective where I feel like, oh no, because really what I'm interested in is setting up all these elites and dealing with Wall Street and Silicon Valley and big business, and the only thing I can do is shut up populism and pretend to be nicer and say that person's vulgar. You know, that is the problem. What Trump did is he demanded that politics become meaningful, and politics couldn't become meaningful. So it just went, just get rid of him and then we can carry on being meaningless. Moreover, Twitter itself now decided things like who won debates. Pundits were often reduced to reporting the platform's mood in place of the previous practice of telling populations how to feel. Think of something like when Chappelle's thing was on Netflix and it gets critics review 3%, it's crap, green splat. Audience approval 99%. And that shows you, oh, I see. There is an attempt to manage and control the way certain issues are perceived, expressing no opinion in particular about the example that I'm using. There's an obvious pushback to being told what to think. Twitter temporarily afforded the option of, well, just let the people decide. That's what democracy is. That's why democracy is not real and never was, because real democracy means stuff might happen that you don't like. What they mean when they say democracy is our democracy. What they mean by the outcome of the people, outcome of our people. What they mean by freedom of speech, freedom for our speech. And that's something that I think you could level at either side, but it's usually the side that's in power whose opinions matter, for the obvious reason that they're able to implement their power. People will focus on the fact it was bad Donald Trump who got elected that year, but that really was incidental. The real problem Trump represented for elite America had less to do with his political beliefs than the unapproved manner of his rise. Twitter, seen as a co-conspirator in this evil, became a target of establishment reprisal after Trump's win. What a great piece of writing and analysis by Matt Taibbi there. There are good journalists out there. There are people trying to tell the truth, and, you know, thank God that there are. It's no coincidence that the once pleasant, or at least interesting, experience of Twitter became a troll-infested, anxiety-ridden hell after 2016. Yeah, that's my experience. I get afraid of it. That little bird now, to me, it might as well be a crow pecking at my eye. Hold on, isn't that our logo? Might as well be a crow farting in my face. That's the point of the crow, is the trickster, that we're beyond duality, we're beyond good and evil, and what is all this really other than gas being expelled from a body? Thanks to everything from a surge in bots to the explosion of outrage campaigns which made saying anything remotely controversial a terrifying and miserable prospect for anyone with a job. After 2016, campaign journalists who lost influence to decide presidential races took revenge by enforcing conformity of message within their own ranks on Twitter. A platform designed to enhance discussion now became more of a social policing mechanism. The main change involved moderation. The one-time gateway to unrestrained speech came under constant assault from politicians on both sides of the aisle. Conservatives accused Dorsey of liberal bias, while Democrats rushed the firm to enact ever stricter controls on speech. First as a bulwark against Russian disinformation, then later against disinformation generally, then finally against Trump himself. We've got to get rid of Russian disinformation. We've got to get rid of all disinformation. All right, just get rid of Trump. By 2020, Twitter couldn't help but become an increasingly regulated environment. It crossed the major censorship Rubicon when it limited access to a New York Post story about Hunter Biden's laptop last fall. We did a story about that, lots of people did a story about that, and I remember I've had it, like me, I am not like what you would call a right-wing conservative person. I have conversations with right-wing conservative people just to sort of marvel at the differences between us and to try and find a common bond of humanity and love for human beings and for the earth and for our families and for society and a sense of goodwill and good intention. But my history, I'm like sort of a post-60s hippie type person, like a libertarian, a radical, like out on marches and things like that. And what do they do if I go, oh, do you think that there's some unbiased point? Republican. Phew, for a minute there, I thought we were living in a censorial dictatorship where you couldn't speak. Hold on, you can't talk about not being able to talk about stuff. Everyone's having a frenetic, frantic, febrile overreaction, emotional reaction to everything because it can't be rationally addressed because it's irrational behaviour based on fear and anger and the deep understanding that there is now no cultural vision being offered. There is no story. Who are we? What are we doing? What are we building together? Who are you? What do you want for your children? How do you see society going? Now that you know it's not going to be, oh, well, technology is going to save us. No, it ain't. So what are we going to do? What are we going to create together? Well, let's just argue and go to war and battle and discriminate and discern and condemn people that are a little bit different than us over minor personal issues. That's not the way to solve this. Wake up. After fiascos caused by official lies like the WMD affair, the weapons of mass destruction, I've read a book about it, no one in government called for tighter regulations of media or the internet or told the executives of private communication firms they had blood on their hands. Weapons of mass destruction, after all, were approved disinformation. The unapproved variety, in the form of, say, anything Trump fought, inspired a different reaction. It's not so easy to apportion public opinion now that there is social media without, of course, taking control over social media, which is precisely what's happened. The Wild West of the social media has now become institutionalized. That's why censorship is rife. That's why certain issues can't even be discussed. People like Dorsey were now told by senators and other figures they had responsibility to prevent misinformation and harm in ways no one else had ever been asked to assume. I think that a lot lately, don't you? Like when things are about, well, think about other people, care about others, you've got a responsibility to others. Okay, should we radically rejig society then? Because I thought it was every man for himself. I thought you make your own luck in this world. I thought you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If what we want is we're all responsible for one another and we're all connected to one another, there's going to be a pretty major review going down about how society is run. It's not going to just be you do this one thing and now it's all okay. So yeah, be careful about which ideology you claim to support. After the January 6 events, Dorsey acceded and shut down Trump's account. The move took place among other under-publicised actions by tech firms that spoke to an increasingly organised top-down system of corporatised speech restraints. In the end, Twitter's explosive growth has forced it to embrace something like the opposite of its original mission. Like the internet generally, instead of a machine for speech without barriers, Twitter is becoming precisely a mechanism for tightened elite control over expression, a thought-policed platitude sanctuary. Wow, what a fantastic piece of writing. Personally, I agree. Just on the level of my own individual experience, Twitter went from being sort of a slightly wild, wacky place, the internet, a realm of possibility, the ability for us to communicate across continents, across the globe, to share ideas, to exchange information, art, ideology, creativity, new solutions for humanity. But no. There are powerful elite structures that just saw it like another territory that needed to be colonized. And that colonization is about coercion. That colonization is about closing down individual rights. And if you can do it while claiming to be about individual rights, if you can do it while claiming to be about saving lives and helping other people, well, that's all the better. Then you don't have to face up to what's actually happening. Tyranny. Tyranny. Let's give it its name. But that's just what I think. What do you think? You tell me. I don't want to be just another tyrant shouting, farting into the abyss. Hit me up in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a like, share it around. And I'm going to ask you now, you've got to turn on that notification bell because we need you. We need you to be directly informed. It's the only way we can guarantee you're going to see our videos. Turn on the notification bell so we can stay in contact with you. If you enjoyed this video, and why wouldn't you have done? Follow this one. And please subscribe to my side channel, Awakening with Russell Brand. And if you want even closer connection with me, and I pray that you do, sign up to my mailing list here. And also, if you're in the UK or you're coming to the UK between January and May, come and see me live. I've just announced dates in Blackpool, Nottingham, Scotland, Glasgow and Edinburgh. Stay free.